Hello and welcome to my review of Double Star by Robert A. Heinlein. I talked briefly about not having read this book on my top 5 Heinlein books video and was quite excited to actually track down a copy. In his heyday, Heinlein wrote a string of juveniles, mostly in the 1950s, but only a handful of novels like this one that are actually intended for an adult audience, so it represents something of an oddity in his back catalogue. Published initially in the pages of Astounding in 1956 and in the UK as a novel in 1958, this won the Hugo Award, the first of Heinlein's many. The book follows the Great Lorenzo, an actor hired to impersonate John Joseph Bonfort, the kidnapped president-elect of the Terran Empire. Initially just a curiosity from a professional point of view, Lorenzo comes to associate himself more and more with Bonfort to the point where the lines between the two are blurred. So much so that when an incapacitated Bonfort is rescued, he continues the subterfuge. Lorenzo is something of a contradiction. Heinlein paints him initially as a penniless actor, hanging around in a bar trying to nurse his last few dollars out as long as possible. I kept my opinion to myself and bought him a drink with my last half imperial. Later we learn that he is famous enough that the Terran Emperor has heard of him and even asks for his autograph. Lorenzo, like all of Heinlein's protagonists, is efficiently competent. Unlike quite a few of them, we actually get inside his head, and the often satirical depiction of the actor's mindset is quite well crafted, as well as lending proceedings a much lighter tone than normal. Lorenzo is also a peculiarity in Heinlein's body of work in that he has a fully fledged personality. He is conceited and arrogant, and it's fun to see the coldly competent people, the special agents, manipulating him into the job by threatening to hire his main rival instead. I simply could not help being indignant at the idea that anyone would even consider that oaf Trowbridge for a role for which I was being considered. That arm waver, that word mouther. I stopped, realizing that it was more dignified to ignore such colleagues, if the word fits. What we also see is Lorenzo so deep into his role, developing into Bonfort the man and embracing his position among the global elite. We do get that trademark Heinlein politics here. The initial urgency provided by the imminent induction of Bonfort into the Martian nest, and the initial threat, the possibility of deaths if it isn't accomplished according to proper Martian protocol, are resolved by Lorenzo's impersonation, and when the opposition realise they are thwarted, they return Bonfort, albeit very poorly. At this point, Lorenzo's role is morally over. Deaths and crisis are averted. However, we are only halfway through the book, and for the benefit of the political party they continue the subterfuge. Rather than being necessary to continue, it is simply expedient. We have a group of elite persons subverting a political process simply because they feel qualified to rule over those little people, saying their lives have no cosmic significance. It's also significant that Bonfort represents the opposition here, not the government. By continuing the ruse, they hope to secure power, taking it from those who have been democratically elected by hoodwinking an electorate they have nothing but contempt for. And these are our good guys. There are occasionally well-crafted action sequences, such as an ambushed motorcade that makes you wish it was longer, and that this sort of thing happened more often in Heinlein. That the Martian initiation ceremony is kept from readers is a tad disappointing from a world-building point of view, but Heinlein's personal experiences in politics are brought to the fore, and their political processes, while an odd mix of English and American politics, works well and is handled with sufficient aplomb that it never really drags the story down. This is Heinlein at his very best, a lean, tightly plotted and very enjoyable sci-fi thriller helped along by a lead with something approaching charisma. That Lorenzo slowly loses himself in the role to the extent that it almost represents a metamorphosis is probably something that in more recent times, or from an author more interested in a human than humanity, might have been realized by a more interesting use of language. It is also the source of the book's worst moment. The epilogue is a kind of tagged-on look back from 25 years in the future. Lorenzo by this point is gone, replaced by the assumed Bonfort persona who looks back on his young self with an unwarranted derision, saying, "It is strange to reread the foolish and emotional words of that young man." It's about here you realise why this book works when so many other Heinlein novels don't. It's precisely because of this word he treats with disdain, emotion. Lorenzo lives and feels on a very human level where too many Heinlein protagonists simply exist to fill that space in the book. In conclusion, Double Star is fun for the first half, occasionally exciting and never less than intriguing. Without the horrible epilogue where Heinlein buries all the good aspects of his novel under his usual grim politicizing, I'd recommend this more highly. Lorenzo is an engaging character with such genuine and human quirks that he's actually quite relatable. This is something so rarely seen in Heinlein that it alone makes this worth trawling through 2 million second-hand bookshops to find. I read this book after I did my 5 of the best Heinlein video, link below, and if I was to redo that video, I'd certainly include Double Star. Lighter than usual, more full of intrigue and excitement than usual, I recommend it to all fans of science fiction, especially to fans of Heinlein. This is one of his best. Thank you for watching. Check out some of the other videos on the channel while you're here. Like, comment or subscribe, and if you're watching on a Sunday, I believe tradition dictates you should ring that bell.